to kick off a meeting with Ravi, Saraswathi, and he will talk about strategies to migrate into AWS. But before that, I will do some housekeeping and saying that we are recording this session. We have a chat ongoing where we try to capture your questions, so feel free to ask your questions in the chat during the presentation. If we are not answering during, we will take it after the session. And also, if you would like to have your question yourself, just raise your hand and I will unmute you. And I will also try to ask, next week's session is open. So if anyone has an interesting topic you would like to present, just reach out to me after the session and I will schedule for the next meeting. And how it is to present, it's really fun. And just to show that, I will hand over to Ravi and have this week's session. Welcome, Ravi. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, good morning, good evening, everyone. I will be talking about the AWS migration patterns. What are the services available? How do we solution it? And how do we price it? So please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Gunnar can interrupt me and ask me. I cannot see the chat, but please feel free to ask any questions that you have. So just an introduction, my name is Ravi. I'm the AWS Technical and Alliance Leader, especially focusing on the AWS solutioning and pricing. So here is a list of all the AWS services that Kyndryl and other organizations use in order to migrate on-prem infrastructure to AWS. It's very important as architects, we identify which service is the best for which use case. For example, like data sync. Data sync is good for moving on-prem data to S3 or EFS within AWS. But if the data size is a couple of petabyte, we cannot utilize data sync. We have to use Snow family, Snowcon or Snow Mobile. So it's very important that we identify which service is suitable for migrating the data from on-prem to AWS. So I provided a couple of, I put a lab link here, migration labs. So in this migration labs, you can get a full practical view of how to utilize these AWS services in order to migrate the assets or the infra application and the data from on-prem to AWS. So please feel free to go through this lab. For example, I'm just looking at one of the services, data sync. I mentioned about it. You can utilize the data sync to move either on-prem storage to AWS or move the data between AWS services. So the lab will walk you through the steps that is needed in order to perform this particular work. Data sync, all you need to do is just install the agent, and then this service will take care of moving the data from on-prem to AWS. So these are the list of applications. Please let me know in the chat, you guys are using any of these services right now. Among all the services listed here, AWS is promoting the first service, that is MGN, Application Migration Service. They're consolidating a couple of other services. For example, SMS, that is listed here, Server Migration Services. Earlier, people were using to migrate, lift and shift the on-prem assets to AWS. Right now, AWS doesn't recommend that. They recommend utilizing MGN, Application Migration Service. And if you're utilizing VMware Cloud in AWS, you can utilize HCX. So it's very good to get a good understanding about all these tools. And also, I put a couple of resources that will help us to do the migration. For example, CAR tool or migration evaluator that will provide us a way of creating the business case for migration, or the MAP, Migration Acceleration Program. Basically, Kyndryl will get incentive for helping clients to migrate to AWS. That will provide us several financial benefits from AWS for helping clients to move to AWS. And if any of the AWS opportunities are available, you can register it in order to get that funding. Actually, I listed a couple of links here. Let me just show it here. If you look at Kyndryl, registration form, once you register it, basically my team will be able to see all the opportunities that come through the partner link website. So we should be able to see all the opportunities that is in progress within Kyndryl for the AWS, and we should be able to assign appropriate resources, and we should be able to help you in order to move and assist, providing the solutioning and pricing. So let's look at what are the tools available or people are using for the migration. The tools has different categories. They have discovery and planning. There are different tools available for creating the business cases or TCO. Let me know in the chat, like, do you guys use any of these tools for your AWS migrations? Basically, Kyndryl, we utilize Cloudscape. And a couple of our clients were using Cloudamize. And our Kyndryl support team, AWS support team, they utilize Datadog for monitoring the AWS infrastructure and also creating the alerts. And Turbonomics, a couple of people are utilizing Turbonomics. So there are several tools available, right? So as an architects, we need to identify which tool best for our customers or which tool the customers are using. In majority of the time, these tools requires the agent install. There are agentless tools available, but still we need to get the admin privileges, admin permissions in order to install these tools into the on-prem. So the first question I asked to the customers is what kind of discovery tools that they already configured within on-prem. For example, if they are using VMware, I always reach out to VMware admin and get a RV tool output. VMware admin should be able to provide an RV tool outputs from the VMware infra. That will tell me all the details about how many bare metal servers they have, how many VMs they have, how much storage they have, what kind of storage they are utilizing. And that will help me to provide the solution for migration. So for us, it is very important that we identify a tool in order to gather the data. And another important things as an architects, we should be able to create architecture, right? Current state versus the future state. I utilize Draw.io and Lucid, and I was using Visio earlier, but I stopped using Visio. I mainly concentrating on the Draw.io. Let me know what kind of tools you guys are using. For example, Draw.io, it's very easy in order to create the AWS diagrams. It doesn't take much time at all. For example, let me show you a couple of things here in order to help you to create the architecture diagrams. If you look at this is a sample architecture diagram for AWS. I do have a lot of templates I created over a period of time, especially in the AWS migrations. Let me know if anybody is interested in order to get that template for the AWS diagrams, because I don't recommend to create it from scratch. There are a lot of diagrams being created for several use cases, depending on which services people are using. And then we should be able to customize that diagram for our customers. It's damn easy to create diagrams even from the scratch. If you really look at it, all we need to do is utilize AWS templates that is provided by AWS, configure that with draw.io. Let me know if you have any questions related to creating this diagram, and you can just drag and drop the entire premises and start adding the compute, right? You can add EC2 instances, you can add any of the container instances or any databases AWS is offering, and you can just drag and drop in the diagrams and it will come up and create you the diagrams for the entire footprint. So it's very important that we create what is the current state for the on-prem assets before doing the migration, and what are we proposing, right? What is our proposal in order to migrate these assets to the customer? And another diagram that I utilize is Lucid. Let me see whether I have that link here. Lucid is good. I mean, I do have a template in the Lucid also. So if you guys are utilizing Lucid, that is fine. You know, especially our networking team extensively using Lucid for the architecture diagram. It's very, very easy to create the diagram even in the Lucid. I mean, you know, it's very, very similar to draw.io. But right now I am utilizing draw.io for majority of my diagrammatic purposes. Okay, so coming back to this presentation, we talked about what are the architecture services AWS we can utilize. We just listed here, and we talked about migration resources. We talked about the tools, and we talked about the architecture. And I just want to talk to you certain scenarios, right? If you look at the on-prem, customer has mainframe. They wanted to migrate to AWS. They have SAP workload. They wanted to migrate to AWS. They have Windows workload. They have AX workload. They have Linux VMware footprint. They have vSphere, which is 5.x, which is out of support. They wanted to migrate it to AWS. So there are a lot of patterns and there are a lot of scenarios that as architects, we need to take a look at it and identify a solution that is suitable for our customer. So in this presentation, I will be talking about a couple of those scenarios and what is the best options. It's not the best options. What are the options available for us to help our customers in order to migrate? So mainframe, for example, they have a couple of tools, like they have micro focus tools, especially for replatforming. There are a lot of customers are using it. AWS is promoting the Blue Age tool, right? That is a tool that we can utilize to transform the mainframe application to Java. And there are a lot of third-party tools available, like Model 9, in order to copy the data from, on-prem. So I do have a separate, presentation that is created, how to address the mainframe modernization, right? And we can definitely discuss in details about what I learned over a period of time about the discovery and also the two patterns, replatform and transform. Those are the two patterns that I learned from middleware, from the mainframe side. So let's look at the couple of areas for migration. So far we discussed a couple of things. Let me know if you guys have any questions, any clarifications that you need. I'm happy to provide. So what are the migration? Yeah, go ahead.
We have a couple of questions. Take them right now. These migration labs in AWS, is they available with the Kindle IDs or is there a special ID required?
It is Kindle ID. So please make sure that every one of you go ahead and register in Quick Labs. It is available for us. And certain labs, you need to pay money, right? You need to pay, you need to buy the credits, but you don't need that, right? You can go all the way till end for the AWS labs. Then you can you don't need to go and provision the environment. That's what I was trying to say, right? You can go all the way till end for the labs, and you can get a full understanding about all the labs, how it is functioning, how it is doing all those things. Please make sure that at the end of the lab, you do a cleanup so that it doesn't acquire any charges for you. But as a Kyndryl, we do have majority of the labs free. So please register with your Kyndryl ID, not from your personal ID.
Okay, thank you. And then you asked about tools used, and a AWS Migration Evaluator is a frequently used tool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So certain tools are reserved for, AWS team. For example, AWS professional team, they use the MRA and MPA. We do get limited access for that, but please let me know if you guys are really interested in any of these tools. AWS team is willing to provide to us, and they can help us in order to set. And cart tool, that is available for anybody to utilize. You don't need any special permission in order to do that. Migration hub, it is available for free to utilize. And ME tool, it is available for free to use. Okay, any other questions?
No, that was all questions. And there was, can you please share the link to the registration for the labs? We can take that.
Yes. Okay, so registration, yeah, I can add it to the presentation. If you search for Quick Lab, you should be able to see that. I can get that link for you guys. So if you look at the qwiklabs.com, let me put it in the chat so that you can get it.
Yeah, that was all the questions for now. There was a discussion on Drawio, and most of the templates and stencils are included when you download Drawio, and also new icons are available, and link is in the chat. So,
all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, so you are familiar with the 6 R's, right? It has been there till 2016. So now AWS has added one more migration strategy, that is relocate. You can see number 7. So what is a relocate? Relocate means you utilize VMware Cloud in AWS and do a vMotion of the VMs from on-prem to AWS. That means no changes, absolutely no changes. So it works without making any changes for your application. It works fine. So I hope you all familiar with all these migration strategies. I don't need to explain each and everything. Lift and shift, replatform, repurchase, and refactor, retire, retain. This has been an industry standard for a long time. So a couple of things we need to be aware of. The AX workload, it doesn't support in AWS. You cannot lift and shift, or you cannot create AX workload as of today in AWS. AWS is not supported. So there are a lot of customers, they have AX workload in on-prem. So what are their options? So of course, Azure, GCP, and SkyTab, those are some of the other options. But the solution that I worked with a couple of our customers, basically we can provide a colo solution. We can put the AX workload in a Kyndryl data center, Colorado or Boulder, Colorado, or any of the other data centers in Ashburn, very near to the customer AWS footprint, and put a link to it, high-speed link at 10 gigabytes. It will work as if it is running within AWS. Let me know if you guys are interested to know about how to address the AX migration. I do have a detailed presentation that I created, the options available, the advantage and disadvantage of each of these options for migrating the AX workload. The other frequent questions that I'm getting is, hey, can I get an account within AWS for me in Kyndryl? So the cloud team is extensively working on, how to set up and how to onboard the AWS accounts, and they did have a couple of presentations to list out all the details about control tower, all the business organizations, how are they onboarding the new customer accounts. So at high level, the AWS accounts within Kyndryl are classified as two, right? One is the PPA account that is called as end user accounts. The second one is the solution provider account, SPAM. Let me see whether I have some details about that. So SPAM account is basically a solution provider account. Both are owned by Kyndryl, but the way we manage those accounts are different. The end user account model, ECAM model, that's called as PPA model. Any AWS account that we create will go under AWS master account. That means we have a control tower. We do have different business organizations. The customer account will go under one of the business unit. In the SPAM model, the customer will get a complete privileges of managing their account. They do get a managed account, root account, and they can set up control tower. They can set up the business unit organization. Basically, they manage the account on behalf of the customer. I am not aware, like, we are creating any of this account which doesn't have any cost associated with an organization. So if you have your customer need an AWS account, there is process involved in that. I put two links here. So the cloud team is managing those links, and they can, once you put that information there, they should be able to get back to you. I put that link here. Here is a reseller account form that you can fill it up and send it across. This is for the ECAM account, and there is another form. It is available from the cloud team that will provide you to onboard a customer account to the Kyndryl account. So let me know if you need more details about those process. I can forward you the documentations from the cloud account team and the presentation from the cloud team so that you can get more details about it. Let me know if you have any questions related to any of this stuff that we discussed right now. So I wanted to talk about a couple of areas. For example, pricing. It is very important that we create a solution for migrating to AWS, but do we have the ability to create how much it will cost to migrate to AWS? So there are two tools that I utilize. One is the simple monthly calculator, and second one is the AWS pricing calculator. So those are the two pricing calculators provided by AWS. And I use the two calculators extensively in order to estimate what is the monthly charges or yearly charges the customer will face once we migrate the workload from on-prem to AWS. And these calculators are very easy to utilize. It doesn't take much time for you to get familiar with these calculators. Let me know if you have a specific question about these calculators. For example, if you wanted to cost it out an EC2 instance, you go to calculator and you say, I wanted to price it out for EC2. So you just type EC2 and press enter. It will provide you what kind of EC2 instances you want pricing for. Is it a dedicated EC2 instance? Is it a bare metal server, or is it a EC2 instance with the SQL server configured there, or is it an outpost? And once you select, this is the service that you need, it will provide you the details about, how much CPU you need, how much memory you need, what kind of storage you need for configuring this, and whether you want a reserve instances, you want a 1-year term or 3-year terms, you wanted to get an upfront cost, are you ready to pay, or is it there is no upfront payment? And storage, whether it is EBS, and what type of storage you need, whether it is GP2, GP3, depending on IOPS that you have, you can select different, storage, and what kind of, what is the size. Once you provide this data, these tools will calculate and will provide you how much it is the cost. So it's very important that we provide the estimate for our customers and utilize these tools provided by AWS in order to estimate how much they will accrue the charges. This is another tool AWS is mandating that we utilize when we submit the migration access MAP program. If you request the MAP assistance from AWS, then they ask us to put all the data in this tool and provide us estimate how much is the yearly charges and monthly charges. And these tools provide a lot of insights in terms of our solution is concerned, right? Because if you select a one service versus another, you can put the costing here and you can get a cost for those two services, because some customers are very price conscious. They let us know, hey, I need to know the ROI for migrating from my assets to AWS, how much it costs. So in that case, it's very important that we utilize a cost effective strategy. We have to meet the customers' non-functional requirements. What is their performance throughput they are expecting? What is the SLA they need in terms of failover? Do they need a high availability solution? Do they need an active, or do they need a regular one region solution? Of course, we need to collect all those information, but these tools will provide you a good view of how much it will cost for the entire solutions. And you can save this cost, and you can save it to your customer, or you can save it to other organizations. So let me know any questions about, I hope you guys are already utilizing these calculators for your pricing. If not, please go through these calculators and get familiar with that. I mentioned about the AWS pricing guidelines. It's very important that we utilize a service or an option that is suited for our customers. For example, storage. Customer may be utilizing a SAN storage or a NAS storage in their on-prem, and they wanted to migrate, or an object storage in on-prem, they wanted to migrate to AWS. Well, AWS has a lot of options. We have EBS, right? For NAS, we have EFS for SAN, we have S3 for object storage, and we have CloudFront for CDN. So, and also we have EC2 instance storage, which require, it's a temporary storage, but if a customer need, performance is very important. I don't care about if my instance goes down, if I lose that data within that EC2 instance, but I need high IOPS for my computation purpose. You select EC2 instance storage, right? And or if you can use Memcache or the other caching tools in order to help the customers in order to get a high performance memory experience. So it's very important that we get a good familiar with what kind of storage options we propose for our customers. So in my point of view, an architect, right, our job is to ensure that we provide a solution that suits for customer to meet their business needs and also meet their non-functional requirements. EBS, for a specific example, this is SAN storage. You can see here, if you propose GP3, which is an SSD storage, which is GP3 category, that costs the customer only 0.08 per gigabytes per month. But if you select like a same SSD storage, for example, IO2, this will cost much higher than GP3. For example, a lot of customers, a lot of architects, I see people are utilizing GP2. I never see a reason why we should propose GP2 for a customer. Because the difference between the IOPS is same, the difference between GP2 and GP3, only the transfer ratio, which doesn't need, most of the customers doesn't care. So it's very, very important that we understand how much IOPS provide each of the storage options and which storage options is suitable for our customer. S3. This is another storage option available within AWS. The question is which S3 storage we can propose to our customer. Again, the cost and versus performance, right? The cost for S3 standard is only 0.02, but the cost for S3 Glacier is 0.0009. So you can see the difference of the cost within the storage. Storage is one of the main component, the reason why the cost is really high in AWS. So please get a good understanding about what are the different S3 categories available within AWS and select a category which is suitable for the customers. I put a couple of criteria here, in terms of the data access, like do they need to access the data every minute, every seconds, or can they access the data only once in every month? So depending on that answers to those questions, you can select a storage, S3 storage that is suitable for the customer. The other thing that is important is if the customer wanted to migrate petabytes of storage, they have 100 petabyte of storage. How do we migrate to AWS? Creating a direct connect, a direct connect link between on-prem and AWS and trying to transfer the data through the direct link, it may not work. In some estimation, it takes months and months in order to complete the data transfer. In that case, we have to select a Snowball Edge device or Snowball mobile device. The same concept is available for other cloud providers like Azure, GCP. They also have the same concept of transferring the huge load to AWS. So we need to get a good understanding about how many terabyte of data or how many petabytes of data customer wanted to transfer, and will a direct link and a high bandwidth solution will help, or do we need to use a Snow family for that? The security services. It's very important to get a good understanding about what are the security services available in AWS, right? I mean, here is a good link about, what customer care. Does the customer care about, vulnerability management, or do they care about, threat detection? So it's get a good understanding about what are the services which they have it in on-prem, what are the compliance requirements, and select the AWS security services that suits the customer needs, especially when they migrate to AWS. So here is a good brief description about all the security services available in AWS. And there are plenty of labs available in Qlik Labs, Qlik. So you can just go through the AWS services in Qlik Lab, and you can get a good understanding about all these services. So here is a highlight of all the services available. The other category of services as solution architects we need to be careful about is what kind of load balancers we need to propose to our customer. If the customer is using multi-region, and if they need an active load balancing, then Route 53 is an option. But if they have only one region, and if they have only a couple of availability zones within that region, then maybe ALB may be an option. And different load balancers support different protocols between layer 4 versus layer 7, between TDP or UDP protocol versus HTTP and HTTPS. So I just put a highlight brief summary about all the load balancers available within AWS and why we should utilize one load balancer versus another load balancer. So please go through all these services which is available. The other things that need to be very careful when we are proposing a solution to our customer is how do we set up our accounts? doesn't make any sense for a customer to utilize a single business organization for their entire AWS workload. AWS highly recommend people to utilize Control Tower in order to set up the business organizations and in order to identify what kind of service control policies they need to roll out on each of the business organizations. For example, security organizations within a customer may need extensive access, read access to all the AWS accounts. They may need to get the VPC flow logs and all the logs that is being created within AWS account. They may need to have a read access, and they should be able to create intelligence reports out of it. So security organizations, a management account owner for that account can create a specific SCP, service control policies, and restrict their access to read-only permission to all the logs that is available within the organizations. A production management organization may need to have the capability to provision within AWS, within certain business units. So they should be able to come up and create all the accounts within that AWS organizations. So please get an understanding about all the line items within that business units and good familiar with how do we set it up the account. In my experience over the years of AWS migrations, there are certain things we cannot make any changes once we set it up the AWS accounts. There are a lot of things we can change it later. So we need to get a good understanding about what can we do on the day one, the entire account setup, setting up the billing preferences, setting up the costing, setting up the business organizations, setting up the landing zones. Those are some of the things we need to be very careful about the initial stages. A lot of other things we can change it later. We don't need to worry about those things, right? So please separate it out. What need to be careful about account setup on the day one versus day two. Okay, so coming back to the original item. So let me know if you have any questions. You can unmute yourself, or you can ask it, or you can put it in the chat. Any questions related to whatever the material that I covered so far?
We have a couple of questions. First, Dennis asked about VMware and AIX migration. I think we'll leave that for after the presentation. But coming to the calculators, we have a question from Virkan Shin. There are very minute details asked in these websites. How do we confirm that? How to confirm that?
Do we confirm?
See, I think we...
Yeah, please unmute your mic and you can speak up. Or
I have to allow that first. We can share just a second.
Okay, so there are, okay, let me go through seminars, best practices link. There are many.
So, Virkan Shin, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the questions. I can answer that. So there are other line items, for example, VMware Cloud. So AWS native, when we migrate the assets, one asset is AWS native, another asset is VMware Cloud on migrations, right? So it's important that we get a good understanding about how do we make sure that how do we work for the AWS VMware Cloud migrations. So let me take one. How do we estimate the price for that, right? Okay, let me get it here. So if you look at here, I created I created a AWS VMware Cloud on AWS, just a one bare metal servers. So this region is AWS West, and within the AWS West, I created one bare metal server, and okay, think I got sign off. So let me log in again to that VMware cloud. So just to give you a high level, right? We can run VMware cloud on AWS, and we will be able to vMotion our assets from our AWS to VMware one. Okay, let me see whether it works or not. Okay, since it's login, we should be able to create the bare metal servers within AWS. And this is one of the cluster that I created in AWS. So once you set up VMware within AWS, you should be able to vMotion the VMs back and forth between your on-prem and AWS. So this works very well, right? The only thing you need to be very careful about is whether this solution is suitable for our customer. Are they looking for extensive AWS native transformation? Then we may not need to propose this lift and shift. If the customer who doesn't care about AWS native options, the VMware cloud on AWS is one of the best solution. So please go ahead and start utilizing the lab. So there are labs available within AWS. Labs you can play around, and you can create the bare metal servers, and you can create a couple of options there, and that's how you can create all these instances. So if you look at within AWS, this is one of the easy to console within AWS, and you wanted to create an instance type. So let's see like what instance type that you can create that supports AWS VMware cloud. So you put a metal here. Type metal. It's somewhat slow today. So if you look at AWS console, you can create bare metal servers, or you can create, the virtual instances. So there are a lot of options available within AWS that will satisfy the bare metal servers, but VMware Cloud that supports only 2 bare metal servers. One is i3.metal, second one is i3en.metal. These are the 2 bare metal servers supported in AWS. If you look at IBM Cloud, VMware Cloud on IBM, they do have much better solution than AWS. They do have several bare metal servers, but in AWS, we usually have 2 bare metal servers available. But this works in majority of the use cases. If the customer has a high storage workload, then select en.metal. It supports up to 768 GB memory per bare metal servers. But if the customer has high CPU and memory requirements, then select i3.metal. So those are the 2 bare metal servers supported in AWS for VMware Cloud. So it's very important that we go through the VMware Cloud sizing. For example, if you get a good understanding about all the RV tools data within on-premises, you can import your RV tools data in the VMware Cloud sizing, and this will let you know how many bare metal servers is needed. For example, I'm saying like a customer has 100 VMs within their on-prem. How many bare metal servers is needed? So these sizing tools help us in terms of identifying how many bare metal servers needed if you deploy this in AWS. We have 4 bare metal servers needed in i3. You can select i3en, then you need only limited number of AWS hosts needed. The other things that you need to be very careful about is how much it will cost. So here is a pricing worksheet that is provided by VMware in order to estimate the VMware Cloud on AWS pricing. And you can see like how many bare metal servers that you need to cost it out, and whether it is 3-year plan or 1-year plan. And this will provide you all the estimations needed to provide to the customer, so that they can estimate it. And Kyndryl has specific discounts for this. We approximately have 35% or 45% discount that I see. So it's very important that we work through our VMware Cloud Alliance team cloud team in order to validate the pricing and the sizing before presenting to the customer. Okay, so we cover the VMware cloud. We cover two options. One is AWS native migration pricing and guidelines. The second one is VMware cloud estimation and also the sizing. Okay, so this is good, right? We estimate how much it will cost for the customer in AWS, but how much resource needed in order to migrate it? How do we estimate the resources, right? And Kyndryl has SDM Guppy tool. I'm not going through that tool today, but you can go through that SDM tool that will provide us a good view of how to add the GP or gross profit on our estimation. How many resource estimations are needed in order to migrate these assets? And we have different organizations within Kyndryl: Cloud Migration Factory, A&IS, MCID. Those are some of the teams that will help us in order to come up with a migration estimation resources. And once you collect these resource estimations, you can put it in the SDM and add your GP, and that's how you get your migration cost or migration price. And lastly, in AWS support estimation. Basically, if somebody wanted to do AWS support estimation, you can utilize the MCMS tools that is available. We have extensive pricing that is available for each of the instance that is available within AWS, how much it will cost for the customer for day two support. That is also listed here. I just put the links. So I won't be able to go through all the details about all this stuff in this particular presentation, but if you need more details about any of this stuff, please let me know. It's very important that we provide our architecture solution. That's important. Identify appropriate services. At the same time, we should have the ability to price it out, how much it will cost in AWS, and also how much it will cost for the customer to migrate that assets from on-prem to AWS, and also how much it will cost for day two support. So this slide will provide you all the details that is needed for a complete 360-degree view of migrations. Let me know if you have any questions related to this. You can unmute your mic, or you can put it in the chat, and I can answer.
Everyone should now be unmuted, so please ask a question.
Yeah. So the next couple of other things that I wanted to cover is what are the services for migration. One of the services is DR. A lot of customers are interested in setting up DR in AWS for the on-prem workload. So I just listed all the services that is available within AWS in order to help you to take a decision which one we can utilize. I will cover some of the services in details right now. The way how do we select which service is best for DR? It depending on what kind of strategy customer want it, how much cost they wanted to incur. One question we need to ask is, what is your RTO and RPO requirements? That is one of the guidelines. If the RTO and RPO is high, then you select backup and restore on the left side options, which is less expensive. But if the RTO and RPO is low, the customer wanted to recover, immediate transaction that happened recently, and customer wanted to happen in real quick, they don't want to wait, then the RTO and RPO is much lower. That means you need to select a DR strategy that meets the customer requirements. For example, active. You divide the workload between your on-prem and your cloud, which is an active, and that will provide them 100% availability of your workload. At least 2 customers asked me, hey, can I create a DR across multiple cloud providers? That means if the AWS is down, can they get the data from GCP or Azure? So certain customers are very sensitive about the RTO and RPO requirements for their on-prem critical workload. So based on that, you can create a DR solution. Let me know any questions about selecting an appropriate, DR strategy. So I'm not going to cover all these details, but let me go through a couple of, architecture that we can utilize for each of these strategy that I explained. For example, backup and restore. That means we only back up the data in AWS. The cost is so low because there is no compute up and running in AWS other than just storage. But if you look at the pilot light, that means we replicate the storage in AWS. And also, we make sure that some of the compute is up and running, especially the databases. The foundational services and the database takes more time to bring it up. So we just make sure that all the database is running in the pilot light scenario. The another strategy people utilize is warm standby. That means we replicate the same production which is available in on-prem in AWS up and running, so that in case of a disaster recovery, they just need to change the DNS entry, either route 53 or info blocks or whatever the DNS they are utilizing, in order to switch the traffic from on-prem to AWS. The last one is multi-site active-active. This is very important. Certain customers are utilizing it, and we need to be very careful about how do we replicate the data in a synchronous. AWS doesn't have a solution for synchronous database replications. They have read replica, they have cross region. So we need to be aware of the limitations on this approach and work with the customer to choose that. So some of the DR solutions I wanted to cover. For example, if it is a VMware workload, based on the cost, supportability, and ease of implementations, customer can choose either AWS solution or VMware solution. VMware has VCDR and SRM. Those are the two solutions for VMware. Let me know if you guys are utilizing any of these solutions for your DR. Like, for example, Veeam. Veeam is very popular. Certo. So if you have a VMware workload, if you need a DR, there are a lot of tool options and service options available. So let me go through a couple of solutions available, which is specific to AWS DR. Number one, AWS DRS. This is one of the services AWS provide in order to replicate the data from on-prem to AWS in a staging area. And they have an orchestrated automated solution in order to migrate the data from staging area to the real VPC. And also you can deploy the replication agents in on-prem. That takes care of the continuous replications. I do have a detailed view on how DRS work. Let me know if you are interested to get more details. The Cloud Endure, that is another services. It is a third-party service. AWS purchase it. And they are incorporating the Cloud Endure feature in AWS DR. So Cloud Endure, couple of customers are utilizing. It is very similar to DRS, but couple of differences. And it is bound to decommission in the later future. I don't know when AWS will be decommissioning Cloud Endure, but right now it is actively being utilized. Let's look at the couple of VMware DR solutions that people can utilize. The VMware Cloud that we talked about, which we can set it up in AWS, basically will provide a capability to vMotion the VMs from on-prem to AWS, and also an ability to utilize AWS native services. And they support two bare metal servers. We went through those two bare metal servers earlier. Please make sure that you understand which one you should choose for solutioning. So we see
a couple of questions, I would say. Murali asked about the RTRPU first. Is that dependent and needs to be calculated on the network bandwidth?
Yes, that's a good question, right? I mean, we need to be very careful about what network options we are utilizing in order to meet RTO and RPO. For example, We set up a highly available solution in AWS, but if your direct connectivity is only a VPN, it doesn't work. That's why it's very important that we work with our networking team. We have a dedicated Kyndryl networking team available for us to help. For example, is Cloud1 is an option for our customer. Cloud1 is a new networking solution, AWS rolled it out. Do we need to utilize transit gateway in order to communicate with multiple VPNs? Do we need to utilize VPC peering or VPC sharing? In order to meet the bandwidth, do we need a 10 gig data bandwidth, or do we need a 1 gig data bandwidth? Do we need to utilize Equinix for connectivity between on-prem and AWS, or can we utilize a direct connect gateway directly, which is provided by AWS? So that's why it's very important that we work with our networking team in order to get an understanding about which solution we should adopt for our customer. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, from Joan, we have a very interesting question. Is it possible to create a stretched VMware HADRS cluster with fault domain on-premise and the second fault domain on AWS with vSAN?
Yes, we can. So we can, in order to, we have a couple of options. We can use a stretched cluster between on-prem and AWS. The advantage of the stretched cluster is it will provide you high reliability feature, high availability feature, because they have, instead of 2 availability zones, they utilize a third availability zone within a region, which can act as a witness, right? That means if you create as a stretched cluster, if one availability zone is down for some reason, then witness host that is running in third availability center will jump in, make sure that customer will get the full availability features it's available. So you can set it up as a stretched cluster, or you can set it up a multi-host cluster. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So coming back to this DR options, we have VCDR and we have SRM. Those are the 2 tools that people are utilizing in terms of setting up DR. So from the VMware side, so what are the other AWS solutions available? For example, IBM Spectrum Protect. That is one of the solution available within customer. So I think we are running out of time here. So I do have a lot of additional slides in terms of to cover what are the services we can select for DR, because the DR is not only the VMware workload. The DR can be NetApp. The customer may be running the Oracle bare metal servers in their on-prem. The customer may be running SAP HANA database. So what kind of options available for all these different categories, and which option we should select for setting up DR? And also other things that we need to cover, I prepared is basically what kind of AWS migration services that people can utilize in terms of migrating the workload to AWS. I don't think we have enough time to cover any of these things today. So I'm looking forward, coming back and talk to you guys again. If Gunnar, I can coordinate with you to see whether we can set it up another presentations in order to cover the remaining material. In meantime, please let me know if any questions, any concerns or anything that you need. Let me know. I'm glad to answer the questions. So before we close, Gunnar, back to you. Any comments or any questions?
Thank you, Ravi. There was those 2 questions about VMware. That's interesting. A customer has a VMware landscape on-premise. Is it possible to migrate on AWS? Can we migrate into native platform, not VMware?
Yes. So we didn't get a chance to cover that. So we listed a couple of services that will help the customer to migrate to AWS native. Every customer is interested in AWS native, not the VMware cloud on AWS. So we didn't get a chance to cover the different services that is available in AWS in order to help to migrate to AWS native. We'll cover it later.
Yeah. And the AIX question, I will connect you to, and we can discuss that offline. And I have support for inviting you for another session in the near future. So I think if there is not an urgent question, I would like to say thank you, Ravi, and I hope to see you here again in a couple of weeks with a new session. And if there is something special you think we should mention on that one, please send a question to us and we will include it into Ravi's presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thank you everyone for joining. Appreciate it. Have a nice day.
Thank you all. And with that, I will close the session. And good afternoon, good evening, good night.